Hello, anti-novelists, Lilligans, friends, and curious onlookers. Welcome back to the library. This is episode 18 of Zettelkasten for Fiction, where imagination finds order. That is the book that I'm writing for you to help you get your novel writing finished. So in this episode, I wanted to continue on talking about scenes and sequels and what those transitions look like. Thank you, Lisa Marie, for the amazing question. I appreciate it. Let's talk scenes. So when you're creating the connective tissue that bridges scenes into sequels, into chapters, into a story arc, you need to have a few specific pivot points that drive that reader through the story. The whole purpose of scene transitions is to keep that reader moving along so that they're following the narrative, they're cheering, rooting for your main character, they're throwing rocks at the bad guys, they're in the story till the end. So, check this out. You know that nothing in the library serves a single purpose. This is a little 3-slot wooden pen and pencil case that I picked up. I grabbed it for $10 on Amazon because, you know, they are our future overlords anyway. But look at this. It's got my favorite pens in it, and it fits a 4x6 note card perfectly. You could have a little stack of blank note cards in here, which I often do. My favorite writing utensil is a retractable, extra fine nib fountain pen. Absolutely love it. And these items just sit on the desk ready at hand all the time. Gotta love that. Utility at its finest. Let's talk scenes. On my 1120.1 card, it's labeled Scene Transitions Guide. In the upcoming book, Zettelkasten for Fiction, where imagination finds order, you will be getting an entire worksheet on scene transitions and how to use them as a way to drive your story forward. As I said, the whole purpose of good scenes and sequels and good transitions is to move that reader through the story by rooting for your main character and throwing rocks at the bad guy. So how do we do that? Well, the most Western conflict-driven story model would say it's a fight, it's a conflict, it's some kind of confrontation, right? There's some kind of friction. And so you're going to end your scene on that friction so that your reader is wondering, yikes, what is going to happen here? I got to find out. The next obvious choice after a conflict or a confrontation is an argument or a disagreement. So that's just ratcheted down a little bit. So maybe they're wondering, how is this going to turn out? What if these characters don't reconcile? What will happen if they do? I'm going to give you a specific example for this. This is Chad, who is my main character's best friend and coworker. His number is 7112 in my Zettelkasten. This is the F card, which I pulled out of the character development cards, which if you watch the character development section, the episode, you'll know that my 7112A through N is all of the character development cards. So this one is /2 because it's the second in the F card series. That is tagged mental fear. This is the card that tells what is this character mentally afraid of. Chad's afraid that people don't really like him, so he is of extreme service in both his work and his social life. His motto is, if I'm just good enough. So that is a conflict trigger for him. When Tara leaves the museum, Chad snaps because his perception is that she didn't choose him. That leads to jealousy. So then we've got a story arc here. On one hand, Tara forgives him for his jealous outburst, and he's restored and put back at ease. On the other hand, she doesn't forgive him, and he becomes bitter, and maybe he even turns into a quasi-antagonist. Maybe he develops a negative character arc as a result of her not forgiving him and feeling like he's been thrown out of her life. So, do you see how I used that 2 potential outcome point in order to think through what I could do there? I'll tell you the truth. I have not yet decided how that's going to turn out. So that is a sequel to the scene that's already written that is yet to be discovered. So stay tuned and I'll let you know how that works. This card is referring to the novel that I'm writing, The Conjuring Stitch, which I have temporarily set aside on hold during its developmental edit in order to finish this book for you guys on the Zettelkasten for Fiction. So let's get back over to our transitions. What if you end your scene on a question or a mystery? You may recall the example that I shared a couple of days ago where Tara is wondering what is going to happen after I have learned this. Oh, it was from yesterday on the turning cards into scenes, where she asks herself about having learned this bit of embroidery. What if I could control this power? What would that look like? Well, that's putting that question in your reader's mind. So then they begin to grapple with it and they start to wonder, what is this character going to do? Is she going to figure it out? So leaving a leading question or a mystery is a great way to end a scene so that you're pulling that reader through the story. A rumination. Now, a rumination would be considered where conflict-driven story is more Western style. A rumination would be considered a more Eastern style. And I am digging deep into world cultures and kinds of story for you. I cannot wait to start sharing that stuff. It will be in the book. It's going to be awesome. But a rumination is just your character thinking introspectively or considering in a circumspect way their situation. So sometimes that can be very compelling if it's written well. You're going to write that scene so that it ends up with that character saying, and I had no idea what I was going to do. Everyone has felt that way. So you're tapping into those feelings in your reader so that they feel that frustration and they want to drive through that story to find out what is that character going to do. A discovery or a milestone. This speaks back to the 3 elements that I discuss when I talk about initially laying out your story. Okay, this is directed at Julianne, who asked me the question, when you have that very first little baby idea for your story, how in the world do you get that down on the page? The 8 plot points and plotting things out seems like a second or a third step. What's the first step of just capturing that new idea? Well, here's a sneak peek at that video that's coming. First of all, you're going to consider your offering. What are you offering your reader? Write it out in a few paragraphs. This is the character. I think this is their name. This is the thing that I think is interesting about them. This is what excites me about this story. I can't wait to investigate X and Y or research Z so that I can share that in the story. You're just sketching out in quick freestyle writing, what are you offering the reader as the story? And then in your next free writing session, you're going to write out, what do you think the discoveries and the milestones of your story might be? Maybe your character is going to mature. They're going to go from an immature, selfish state into a more mature, generous state. Maybe they're going to go from having no self-confidence and not being invested in their career or the career that they wish to get into, and they're going to experience a transformation and end up conquering that lack of confidence and end up confident and nailing that job that they've always wanted, right? Those are stories that end with the win, but those are your milestones. You're ticking off the things that they might have to go through in order to get to the end of that story. So discoveries and milestones are 2 key pieces that you can sprinkle throughout a narrative, throughout scenes and sequels and chapters, in order to give your readers those wins. And if you can drop clues along the way that allow your reader to figure out the discovery or see the marking of the milestone before the character does, super double, triple bonus. Readers love to be smarter than the characters. And as an author, that is a super fun exercise to go through. So if you're interested in that, drop me a comment and I will reply with a video on how you get that done. The final of the 3 things that I share, the offering, the discovery and milestones, and the third thing is the settlement. That's how are you going to land this story? Maybe that's your initial idea. Maybe that little inkling in the back of your head says, what if I show a character that is totally beaten down, totally defeated by life? They're down to their last dollar, their last shred of sanity. They are down and out. But I want to show a character that triumphs against the odds. That's your settlement. That's your story. That's your, what they would call in screenwriting, as Julianne said, a treatment. Though I am loath to compare novel writing to screenwriting. That's a whole nother rant for another time. Suffice it to say, identifying your offering, some discoveries and milestones, and what the settlement could be is a great way to pin that story down on the page, so then you can let those ideas ruminate and knock around in your head until you get some more ideas, and then you can start hammering into a more narrative style or form. Just get it down on the page, even on note cards. It doesn't matter, just capture it. The final thing that I've listed on this short cheat guide is leaving your characters in danger or on a cliffhanger. Now, I will caution you, readers get very fatigued of too much danger or cliffhangers. You can get very worn out when bombs are blowing up and people are getting shot at and it's just action, 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 action. We need some quiet reflection. We need time to process what's happened and to see the characters processing it, which is one of the things that makes characters real for us. They behave the way that we would, and nobody can be action, 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 action all the time. So pepper those dangers and cliffhangers in with a light hand, and your readers will appreciate it because they will stick with the story, and ultimately that's what we want. So that is an overview of scene transitions and how to get between scenes and their sequels, and then how to stitch chapters together. We're going to go deeper into this, but as I said, you'll get the full guide when the book comes out. So I will continue down the road of researching scenes and putting together that workbook, those worksheets rather, that go in the book. Today is July 30th. I'm sitting at 19,517 words written in the Zettelkasten for Fiction how-to guide. So the book is coming along brilliantly. I'm feeling very good about it. Stuff is just falling into place. So please do continue to share your questions or things that you'd like to hear more about. Definitely hit the thumbs up and the subscribe button because that does help get this out to people to whom it might be helpful. And I very much appreciate your time, as always. I know that time is our most precious resource, and I love sharing my time with you and hopefully helping you along through your story. And I'm grateful that you choose to share your time with me. So I will see you in tomorrow's video, where we continue unpacking the contents of the forthcoming book Zettelkasten for Fiction, and I will answer some more questions and keep plowing ahead. So see you tomorrow.